Welcome to NFL Nexus, where we go deep on the stories that are really shaping the league. Today, we are diving headfirst into the absolutely critical offseason facing the Indianapolis Colts. You see, their 2025 season, it wasn't just a letdown. It was this wild ride full of incredible promise that ended in a just gut-wrenching collapse. And it left them right back where they started, watching the playoffs from home. This is so much more than just another rebuilding year. The Colts are at a true crossroads, and the moves they make right now in these next few weeks, well, they're going to define this team for years to come. So how do they fix it? Let's break it all down. Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle this. We're going to look at the Colts situation like they're fighting a war on two fronts. First, we'll go back and revisit that season of what-ifs that got them to this breaking point. Then we're going to get into the really thorny issue, the massive dilemma they have at quarterback with Daniel Jones. After that, we're flipping over to the other side of the ball, where their defense is, frankly, in desperate need of a complete teardown. And finally, we'll connect all the dots to show you how these problems are actually part of one big strategic puzzle. And we'll ask the biggest question of all. What is the actual path forward for this team? To really, and I mean really, understand the pressure cooker this front office is in, you have to remember the feeling around this team for the first 3 months of the season. This wasn't a team that was bad from the jump. No. This was a team that looked like a legitimate, honest-to-goodness contender before it all just came crashing down. And you know what they say, the higher you climb, the harder you fall. I mean, just look at this. The contrast it's jarring. Through 12 games, the Colts are sitting pretty at 8-4. They are in the driver's seat for a playoff spot. People around the league are buzzing about them. They had an identity. They were tough. They were winning those tight games. It really looked like the plan was working. But then the bottom just completely falls out. They drop 5 straight games to finish the year 8-9, a season that looked so promising, completely up in flames. And that dramatic swing from contender to total collapse is exactly why this offseason feels so incredibly important. They got a taste of how good they could be, and that makes the failure sting that much more. So how on earth does a team go from 8-4 to 8-9? Well, it was a total catastrophe, a chain reaction that started at the single most important position on the field. In Week 14, their quarterback, Daniel Jones, who was having this fantastic comeback year, he goes down. Torn Achilles, season over, just like that. And to make a horrible situation even worse, their promising rookie backup, Anthony Richardson, was already on IR. The team got so desperate they had to coax a 44-year-old Phillip Rivers out of retirement. And yeah, it was a great story for a minute, but it was a Hail Mary that just didn't connect. The Colts did not win a single game after Jones got hurt. And this is the result of that collapse. Five straight years without a trip to the postseason. For a proud franchise like the Colts, with a fan base that lives and breathes football, that's an eternity in the NFL. Just think about what that really means. There's a whole generation of young fans who might not even remember the last time the Colts played a meaningful game in January. It means 5 years of watching other teams fight for a Super Bowl while you're at home figuring out your draft position. That number, 5, it just hangs over every single decision the front office makes. It creates this intense urgency to finally get it right. And that all starts with solving the biggest problem they have. Which brings us right to the first front in the Colts offseason war, the Daniel Jones dilemma. After his amazing season was cut short by that devastating injury, the team is staring down a franchise-altering, maybe even career-defining decision about who is going to be their starting quarterback. To really get why this is such a tough call, you have to look at the absolutely wild financial roller coaster Daniel Jones has been on. So, back in March of 2023, he hits the jackpot. A massive 4-year, $160 million deal with the Giants. That contract, it quickly became a disaster for them, and by November 2024, they just cut him loose. That's when the Colts swooped in with a classic buy low move, signing him to a 1-year, $14 million prove-it deal. And for 12 games, man, that gamble was paying off big time. But now, after a major Achilles tear, he's a free agent all over again. And what his next contract looks like is one of the biggest question marks in the entire league. So what are the options here? Well, one tool teams have is the franchise tag. But just look at this number, over $47 million. Let me put that in perspective for you. The NFL salary cap is projected to be around $260 million. That means this one player would eat up more than 18% of your entire team's budget. That's a staggering amount of cash to commit to any player, let alone a guy coming off a major injury who might not even be ready for Week 1. One anonymous NFL GM even said that before the injury, tagging him was a no-brainer. But now? That kind of financial risk makes the tag a very, very unlikely path for the Colts. So if the tag is off the table, does that mean he's gone? Well, according to folks around the league, not so fast. There seems to be this growing feeling that a reunion is just the most logical outcome for everybody. As this GM put it, it makes too much sense not to happen. And why is that? Well, think about it from Jones's perspective. Rehabbing a torn Achilles is an incredibly tough process, both physically and mentally. Now, imagine doing that while also trying to learn a brand new offense, move to a new city, and build chemistry with a whole new set of teammates. It would be a monumental challenge. Staying in a familiar system with the Colts gives him the best possible shot to get back to 100%. Okay, so the most likely solution here is a compromise that works for both sides, what's called an incentive-laden contract. Basically, instead of a huge guaranteed salary, the Colts can offer Jones a deal with a lower base salary, but with the chance to earn a ton of money through bonuses. Bonuses for playing a certain number of games, or hitting passing yardage goals, or, of course, leaving the team to the playoffs. This structure is a win-win. It protects the Colts. If his recovery hits a snag or he doesn't play well, they aren't stuck with a massive cap hit. And it gives Jones the chance to bet on himself and earn back that top-tier QB money if he returns to his old form. It's really the perfect middle ground. All right, so let's just assume the Colts get that deal done with Daniel Jones. Great. That only solves half the problem. Now we have to pivot to the other side of the ball, where a seemingly minor coaching move is actually a symptom of a much deeper, more systemic issue that has been plaguing this Colts defense. And as you're about to see, the problems on defense are every bit as urgent as the ones on offense because, let's be real, a healthy quarterback doesn't mean much if your defense can't stop anybody. So a little bit of news broke recently that a defensive quality control coach, a guy named Brant Jackson, was leaving for a new job with the Cardinals. Now, on the surface, this is not a headline. Quality control coaches are super important behind-the-scenes guys, but, them leaving rarely makes a ripple. In this case, though, it's not about who is leaving, it's about what his departure represents. It's another piece of the puzzle showing that a full-scale defensive overhaul is happening in Indianapolis. This isn't just about plugging a few holes, this is about tearing the whole thing down to the foundation and starting over. And why is a total overhaul so necessary? Well, take a look at this one number. Out of 32 teams in the National Football League, the Colts' pass defense ranked 30th. 30th. That is, statistically, one of the worst units in the entire league. In today's NFL, where everything is built around the passing game, that is a death sentence. You simply cannot be a serious contender with a secondary that performs that poorly. It forces your offense to be perfect and try to win a shootout every single week. It's the root cause of why this defense needs to be stripped down to the studs. And let's look at the ugly, raw numbers behind that ranking. The Colts were giving up nearly 250 passing yards every single game. And on top of that, they gave up 24 passing touchdowns. That's almost 1.5 passing scores surrendered every single week. This chart, it just paints a crystal clear picture of a defensive backfield that was constantly getting torched. And these aren't just stats, right? They represent those back-breaking third down completions that kill a drive, or those game-losing touchdowns in the fourth quarter. It's just not a sustainable way to win football games. So the departure of a coach like Brant Jackson and the hiring of his replacement, it isn't just shuffling deck chairs on the Titanic. Sources inside the league are calling this a broader recalibration. Now, what that means is that the front office and the new defensive leadership are intentionally remaking the entire coaching staff with a new philosophy. It's about building the structure correctly from the bottom up, making sure every single coach in that building is on the same page, with a clear vision for how this defense is going to play. Okay, so here's the fun part. This is where the two fronts of this offseason war, the offense and the defense, they merge into one single cohesive strategy. The decisions they make on offense, specifically with their quarterback, they create this massive domino effect that directly impacts how they can fix their problems on defense and everywhere else. It's all connected. It's a masterclass in roster management, if they can pull it off. So let's ask the key question here. How does getting a specific type of deal done with Daniel Jones ripple through the rest of the team's offseason plan? The answer to this really shows you the high-stakes chess match that NFL general managers are playing all the time with the salary cap, where every single dollar you save on one player is a dollar you can spend to fix another glaring problem. So here's the domino effect in action. Step 1, you sign Daniel Jones to that team-friendly, incentive-based contract before the March 3rd franchise tag deadline. That move accomplishes step 2. It lets you avoid using that crazy expensive $47 million tag on him. And that unlocks the most critical part of the entire strategy. Step 3, it frees up your franchise tag, so you can use it on another player, a key offensive weapon that you absolutely can't afford to lose. And that key weapon is wide receiver Alec Pierce. I mean, this table tells you everything you need to know about how vital he is to what they do. For 2 straight seasons, he has led the entire NFL in yards per catch. That makes him one of the absolute best deep threats in the game. In 2025, he had his first 1,000-yard season on an incredibly efficient 47 catches. But here's the problem. He's a free agent, and a player like that is going to get a massive contract on the open market. So by not using the tag on Jones, the Colts can now slap it on Pierce. Now, it's still pricey at nearly $29 million, but it's a manageable one-year cost to make sure their number one big play guy is back in the fold for Daniel Jones in 2026. So, when you put all of these pieces together, a really clear and deliberate path forward for the Indianapolis Colts this offseason starts to come into focus. They're tackling major issues on both sides of the ball at the same time, with a series of smart, calculated, and interconnected moves. This isn't a team panicking. This is a front office with a cold, calculated plan. The entire Colts offseason really can be boiled down to this one idea. They are fighting a war on 2 fronts. On offense, they're taking a calculated gamble. They're betting on Daniel Jones's recovery, but with a contract that protects them financially. And on defense, they finally accepted that small changes aren't going to cut it. They are executing a total rebuild of both the coaching staff and the players. It's a high-risk, high-reward strategy that's either going to launch them back into the playoff picture or set them back for years. So their path forward is multifaceted, but it's crystal clear. First, lock down the quarterback position with a smart, team-friendly contract. Second, use the financial flexibility you gain from that deal to keep your best playmakers, like Alec Pierce. Third, completely reconstruct a defensive coaching staff and give that side of the ball a new identity. Fourth, aggressively overhaul the players on that defense, especially in that struggling secondary. And all of this, every single move, is aimed at one single overarching goal: to finally, after a long and frustrating wait, end that 5-year playoff drought. But even with this clear plan, the big question still hangs in the air. The strategy makes sense on paper, the steps are deliberate, but the risks, they are very, very real. They're putting their faith in a quarterback coming off an Achilles tear and rebuilding a defense that was one of the worst in the league. So I'll leave you with this to think about. Are the Colts executing a wise, calculated rebuild that will set them up for long-term success? Or are they just rearranging the pieces of an already flawed puzzle? Only the 2026 season is going to tell us the answer. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. And hey, if you enjoyed this breakdown, do me a huge favor and subscribe to NFL Nexus and hit that like button. It really helps the channel out a ton. Also, be sure to check out our new coloring books. They're perfect for kids, grandkids, and even adults. You can get to them through the link in the description or just use the QR code on the screen. Thanks for watching.